Hey everyone, welcome to Ask the Expert. I'm Frédéric. I'm part of SFM's technical application group, and I'm here to answer all your questions about Shure Conferencing. Our first question. I have two MXW Next 8 APX units in the same room. Several microphones are linked to both MXW APX units. Is there a risk of interference between the different RF channels? Well, there is a risk if they're not configured together. So super important that when you're commissioning the system, you of course are going to be using Shure Designer 6. And when you click File, New Online Room, you're going to drag and drop into that configuration each of the access points and the charging stations. And of course, when you're done commissioning the system, they have to stay on the same subnet. So by doing that, putting them in the same configuration, they will communicate with each other, and they will ensure that they are coordinating accordingly so that they don't, do any interference to one another. MXW Next, it's actually using the DEC band, which is roughly 1.9 gigahertz. I think it's 1920 to 1930 megahertz. So it's only 10 megahertz, right? So unlike a traditional UHF system, we're actually not coordinating frequencies, but we're mostly coordinating timing. So we want to ensure that these microphones are not emitting at the same time. So that's how it works under the hood, but all you need to worry about is same configuration and same subnet, and they will take care of the rest. Then you don't need to do anything. Next question. Do multiple AP require the use of an external DSP? So AP in this case, they're referring to the Microflex Next technology. It could be the Next 4, 8, or 2, doesn't matter. So yes, as soon as you have multiple of those access points, or APX, same thing, in the same room, you do need an external DSP. And that's because we need to be able to mix, right, the audio channels of all of these access points. They have an auto mixer built in, but each access point will have its own auto mixer. So we need to merge that or mix that together so that we're able to feed that over to our MTR or compute or which other device, right, using a single USB cable. So that's reason number one, that we need a DSP, an external DSP. And the second reason is we need to send back a reference to each of the access points. Basically, the access point now are capable of doing echo canceling. That's a new feature that we didn't have before. But for echo canceling to work, we need to feed a reference. And the reference it's telling the AEC processor what exactly are we trying to cancel out. And in the case of a video conferencing space, we're trying to get rid of that audio coming down from the speakers and hitting our microphones. And that's the voice of people on the other side of the call. So what's going to happen is your MTR, your compute running the video conferencing application sends the audio to the DSP, to the loudspeaker, and we want that same channel that's going to the loudspeaker to also be fed via Dante to our access point. So another reason why we need a DSP when we have multiple of those access points. It could be the P300, and then everything can be configured using Designer 6, so it's very easy to use. But of course, you don't have to use a P300. You could also use QSys, Biamp, etc. So, as soon as you have a DSP that will support Dante, you're good there. Can I install Next system in a room where the legacy Microflex wireless system is operating, and will they interfere with each other? So unfortunately, we can't have the legacy MXW and the new Microflex Next in the same room. They're incapable of coordinating with one another. So we talked earlier in this video why coordination is important. Unfortunately, two systems, two technologies. Well, they're both using DECT, okay? They're both using that 1.9 gigahertz spectrum, but they haven't been designed to coordinate with one another. So if they're physically in the same room, I pretty much guarantee that they will interfere with one another, unless the room is massive and the RF power is set to low. So what I mean by RF power is that both systems, you can set the RF power from low, medium high, and then max. Okay, so low is 25 feet roughly line of sight. So, you know, in theory, if the access points are far enough from one another, based on the RF power that you've chosen, then you'd be fine. But, you know, if they're within that range, then you're very likely to run into some problem. All right, our next question. What is the ideal placement of the MXW-NEX APX? Can we install it on the ceiling like a Wi-Fi access point? Well, that's a great question because, I mean, it really looks like a Wi-Fi access point, right? So, when the first time I saw this, I thought, oh, let's just put that on the ceiling. But the pattern of this APX or access point is actually different than a wireless access point, than a Wi-Fi access point. So typically, most Wi-Fi access points, when you put them on the ceiling, the beam or the pattern is actually to go, you know, this way, right? But our access point, it's actually not quite the opposite, but like, let's say 90 degree to that. The energy is pointing from this side this way. So the best placement for the MXW-NEX APX is actually on the wall. In some cases, if it's a small room, and I'm thinking mostly like a square room, you might be fine to put it on the ceiling because the room isn't very long, right? But if you're looking at a long rectangular space, you know, over 50 feet, then I would highly recommend you put it on the wall because, you know, that data that I gave you earlier with the low, medium high, and maximum, that's assuming you're putting it on the wall and then it's clear line of sight, right? So even if you put this thing to maximum RF power, which is 150 feet, and you put it on the ceiling, you're not gonna get that 150 feet across, you know, that you're looking for. Yeah, definitely put it on the wall as much as possible to achieve the greatest operating range. Now shifting over to IntelliMix Room Kit. Question is, I noticed the IntelliMix Room Kit has AI denoiser and AI deverb. Can you explain what these features do, and are they also available on the P300 if I update the firmware? Okay, so they are not available on the P300, and here's what they do. AI denoiser it's a processing that's post auto mixer, and it literally listens to the audio feed and it will cancel out anything that isn't considered speech. So, you know, typing on a keyboard, opening a bag of chips, you know, HVAC noises, it's going to be canceled out. And there's a really good video. I mean, hearing is believing, right? So if you Google Shure AI denoiser, there's a great video on YouTube that demonstrates when that feature is on versus off. And it's really impressive. I highly recommend you go and check it out. And that is a feature of IntelliMix Room Kit, the IntelliMix Room Kit, right? As well as the IntelliMix Room software. Okay, AI deverb. AI deverb, the goal is for rooms that are very reflective. So a reflective room is when it sounds kind of echoey. perhaps you're on the far end of the call, and it sounds like when someone is speaking, it sounds very roomy, kind of hollow. So that's because the room is reflective. There isn't enough absorbent surfaces in the room to absorb those reflections. So sound is just bouncing around and getting to your microphone at different intervals. So, I mean, acoustical treatment actually is great to reduce. It's the best way to reduce those artifacts. But AI Deverb is trying to approach this challenge from a DSP perspective. So what it's going to do using AI is basically trying to attenuate that effect, those artifacts. And again, if you Google Shure AI Deverb on YouTube or Google, you're going to see a demonstration of it in action and what it does. So both of these features are fairly CPU intensive, and that's why, unfortunately, it's not available on the P300. And it is possible to have these features on the Intellimix Room Kit and the Intellimix Room software because, well, we have an Intel processor that has a lot more capability to run software application, right? So only on the Intellimix Room Kit and Intellimix Room software. Also, I do want to mention these two features are off by default when you deploy the Intellimix Room Kit. And that's just to satisfy a requirement of Microsoft for certification. So if you want to take advantage of it, make sure you open up the software and turn them on. Next question, this one is about the ceiling arrays. What are the main differences between the MXA910 and the MXA920? When should I pick one versus the other when designing a boardroom or a conference room? So MXA910 has been on the market for a long time, and then it was replaced by the MXA920. And more recently, the MXA901 was released. So what are the major difference about the MXA920 versus MXA901 is that the MXA901 is a fixed 20 feet by 20 feet coverage area. If you use the 920, you know that you have the ability to make the coverage as small as you want or as big as you want, you know, technically up to 50 feet by 50 feet. But generally speaking, we recommend using one MXA920 per 30 feet by 30 feet. And that's because typically room acoustics aren't perfect, right? Unless you're in a room that has, you know, acoustical treatments and sounds really good, has very little reflection, you're not going to be able to achieve that 50 by 50. So anyway, 30 by 30 coverage is a good ballpark for the MXA920, but you're not stuck with a 30 by 30, right? You can make it as small as you want or as big as you want, and you can have multiple coverage areas within that, let's say that square. So if you are looking for coverage only in specific areas of your room, the MXA920 is a great pick because you can have up to 8 dynamic coverage areas. The MXA901, it's a single coverage area and it's a fixed 20 by 20. You're able to shift it by 4 feet in each direction, but depending on where you're going to be mounting the microphone, if 4 feet isn't quite enough to, you know, position it where it needs to be, or if you you're looking at a bigger room than 20 by 20 or need coverage only in specific areas, that's where the MXA920 is going to shine, basically. When you're designing a system, when you're specifying a project, I highly recommend to use Designer 6. It has the ability to, you can upload your floor plan and you're able to overlay any of our microphones and see which one is going to work for your needs, basically. And that's offline. You don't need the actual hardware with you. So that's a great tool to determine, hey, is that microphone the right need for the space? Also, when you're looking at coverage, think about where you need coverage in the room. You don't need coverage in the entire room. Typically, it's coverage above the boardroom table and perhaps a little bit at the front for a presenter. So, think about not necessarily the entire size of the room, but where exactly in that room you need coverage, and that will help. Okay, our last question. So that one is for the MXA 902. And it is it true that we can now install more than one MXA 902 in the same room? The answer is yes. When the MXA 902 was released, it was not possible. But as of version 6.2 or later, firmware version, it is possible now. But it needs to be done in a specific way. You need to make sure there's a minimum of 14 feet between both mics, and ideally about 18 feet. So 14 feet minimum between the microphones, and 18 feet would be considered better. And now there's been some improvement on the firmware that makes these this type of deployment possible. So if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to our team directly, to the TAG, Technical Application Group. So we can be reached at support@sfm.ca. And thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.